Joining us from our Nairobi studio to take a look at Kenya markets and all the other things that we need to talk about, but the moving markets, is independent analyst Robert Munuku. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Robert. I need to start off with Barclays Kenya's numbers, which are just out after trading yesterday. 28.1% increase in its net profit to 1.96 billion shillings, and the profit before tax 21% up as well. What are you making of these numbers?
Good morning, Larry. Thanks for having me on. Well, the numbers are really good. I expected that from Barclays. I mean, it's always been one of the leading banks when it comes to profitability. It may be a bit behind, like if you look at its peers, like Equity Bank, which, looking at the actual quantity of the profit it made, was higher. But I guess what really they're banking on is loans forwarded to the private sector, loans forwarded to the government, at a time especially when interest income is waning because of the high rates. So I guess looking on, we'll be more curious to see how the half-year results will be, because that will actually paint a clearer picture of where the bank is headed. But I guess moving on at 13 shillings, Barclays Bank remains, I would say, fairly priced on the stock exchange.
And there's a strong fight for profitability, Robert, among the big ones, KCB and Equity Bank as well. Do you think who looks likely to be besting that throne right now?
Well, it depends. I think right now we've reached a point where organic growth may be the only way out for the banks. They're really struggling because of cost of funds. Barclays, the likes of Standard Chartered, some of the big names who focus on wholesale banking may have to rethink their strategy and focus more on retail banking, which seems to be the key driver of organic growth in the banking sector. So Barclays may want to consider some form of regional expansion or other marketing strategy if it's to keep up. But right now, I would say KCB, Equity Bank, and Cooperative Bank are actually at the helm of the banking sector.
Let's talk Kenya Airways. Virgin Atlantic announcing it is leaving the London Nairobi route from September because really it's just not making money on that route. Does this mean prospects for Kenya Airways are now better?
Yeah, well, I guess so. More so on the London Nairobi route. Virgin may have been struggling a lot. I don't know the model they used. Kenya Airways, on the other hand, is also fresh out of a rights issue. They have money in the past. They have a lot to do with it. I guess it may be a plus, but not that big a plus, because we also must remember Kenya Airways also faces regional competition from the likes of Ethiopia Airlines and others. And locally here, internally, it faces competition from some of the smaller players who offer cheaper rates for their services. I'm talking of airlines like Jetlink, Air Kenya. So I guess it is a plus, but not that big a plus.
Tell me, how strong is that business as an airline? South Africa, for instance, discussing what is, in any case, a bailout for SAA, and that is one of the prime competitors for Kenya Airways.
Well, I guess it all comes down to the business model. I guess if you look at Kenya Airways, if you go to their 10-year growth plan, they've actually highlighted a key number of areas, and I guess they'll focus less on route expansion, which they've been doing over the past 5 years. This is actually their second rights issue. They had one in 2006. This is also a success, more or less. They're also going into cargo and freighting, which is actually expected to beef up their revenues. They've hedged on fuel costs and as usual, and I guess it may be a talking point, but I still think they have a potent plan and to keep their competitors at bay.
Let's talk to now move on to one of East Africa's most profitable companies, Safaricom, and the reports out of Kenya today. Vodafone, which owns a stake in Safaricom, earned almost 2 billion Kenya shillings from license fees for M-PESA, the money transfer service. And this brings on to the fact that M-PESA may be a Safaricom product, but it still does belong to Vodafone.
Well, yeah, that's been an interesting story. I had a chance to look at it in the morning. Well, 25% goes to Vodafone, and M-PESA actually contributed 16% of the revenues Safaricom made for the year ended March 2012. So I guess that may be a good thing for Vodafone. But what we must remember is that Safaricom is moving away from depending on voice-generated revenues. They are moving more to data and more to mobile money, which actually does not have a threshold, because people will always need to transfer money, people will always need to do business, transact. So I guess this is actually something which will keep Safaricom running for some time.
Turning to the currency, Robert, the shilling can now be described to be in free fall. It declined yesterday for the 7th straight day. It is just continuing to weaken against the dollar. What is happening? Is there an end to this soon?
Well, it's been a bit interesting how that has happened. Well, I guess we still have CBK having a tight grip on currency control. I mean, after all, fiscal policy and monetary policy is their prerogative, so they do have a key hand in this. Well, looking on, I guess it's more of a temporary thing. I guess we'll see it balance off probably by tomorrow, maybe by Monday. I guess it's something which is more of a phase than something which is to stick, and it's more policy related rather than, it's not something really that relates to the fundamentals of the currency.
And speaking of the policy, the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has kept the CBR unchanged at about 18.0%, 4 months plus. Is the time they sort of give a bit of wiggle room here and moved it around?
Well, it's been a kind of a vast approach to monetary policy, because they don't want to appear to make any drastic move either up and down. So we've been seeing more of a neutral kind of monetary policy in the country. But moving on, I would probably think we should expect something more expansionary in terms of monetary policy, because we're moving towards June, when we have the national budget should be out there. There are many infrastructure projects for the government. In short, there's a lot of need for money. There's a lot of demand for that. There's inflation, on the other hand, that's biting the locals. And I guess moving on, I'm curious to see what the next review will have next month. But I would rather they adopt a more expansionary monetary policy coming forward.
There's still the issue of the Hague that is hanging over the head of many Kenyans. Yesterday, the ICC chief prosecutor saying he will not oppose a delay to the trial of the 4 prominent Kenyans that are going to be before that court. Does this mean the uncertainty around the Kenyan economy as a whole, the political risk, is heightened?
Well, there are those uncertainties, but I guess they are not as pronounced as we had expected. And again, if they were, we would have been feeling the effects. I guess what's happening now, I think things are underway. The law seems to be on track. Perhaps when we move towards the end of the year, we don't know when the election date will be set. Maybe it would be in December if Parliament is dissolved, or March, depending, I don't know. But looking on, I guess we are fairly stable politically. I don't want to raise a red flag and say Kenya is a political risk. And I think we have to streamline a few things here and there. But foreign direct investment is still coming well in, and I think it's expected to improve in coming months.
Being very cautious and optimistic. Many thanks, Robert Munuku, independent analyst, joining us out of Nairobi.